I'm just going to read the last four numbers.
So the last four digits is 6482.
6482.
360 6482.
64. Yeah, got it. Anybody got that lucky number? They left? So, what do we do? A crowd thing like, hey! How long do we give them? Okay. So I count to 5. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Okay, sorry that you left early.
Six, 5, 1, 2.
All right. Now we're going to have one of these baskets. Then we're going to set up the question, the Q&A. All right? Richard.
Yeah. So Jacob, hopefully you can hear me. Yay, it's a miracle. Oh my goodness. Wow, okay. So House is Squeezed Hannah. I work at Ntamtqen Community Garden and Food Hub, and it's my great joy and honour to work in Silk's Milk territory and to help this beautiful project. And it's a great pleasure to have met Jacob as well, and to experience a connection with him and between him and Dixon, and the collaboration and the parallel paths that have happened. So I think it's a really special connection, so I'm very happy that we can share that with you tonight a little bit. So thanks so much for joining us. Just a little bit on how this is going to work. So I'm going to introduce Jacob and ask a question, and then I'll ask the panelists to introduce themselves. But before we get to that, I'm going to ask Hoven to join me, and she's going to share a little bit of her story. So at the Ntamtqen Community Garden, there's Dixon, project manager, visionary, makes stuff happen on the ground. There's me, I coordinate, and I just do the paperwork and help with funding proposals and all those sorts of things. And then Coven joined us as a trainee this summer, mid-May, and she's staying on with us. So I'm very happy to welcome her to share a bit of her story.
Hi. As you were told, and as some of you may know, my name is Coven Tabasco. I was born in Ntamtqen, British Columbia, but I did most of my growing up in Spokane, Washington. I am enrolled Lower Snoqualmie Indian Band, and my family resides and is from Blind Creek Reserve in Coston. So my presence in our community has been pretty much non-existent in my years of growing up. My parents kind of moved us to the States, and I did a lot of my youth building there, if that's what you want to call it. With the help of the family that is from Blind Creek, I was able to move back home, and I'm forever grateful for it. In terms of TeaCreek, I am basically like Ntamtqen's justice. I chose a better path for myself, and that redirected me back home and brought me back to who I am. I have the big thanks to give to my mentors, Hannah and Dixon. They have done a lot for me and took me in at a time where I really needed some guidance, and I really appreciate that. I have no experience with what I'm doing right now, but they decided to give me that fighting chance that I needed in life, and I found myself administratively assisting and helping out in their lives. I come from a service industry background, so a bartending life, and that didn't go so well in these past few years, and I kind of got lost. but now here I am back home and truly where I feel like I belong. And I really appreciate the welcoming hands that I've had from my family, even though I have not been around. And I'm very much appreciative, and this has saved my life, the garden. And I'm looking forward to many more years, considering I am finally rooted back home. Thank you.
That makes me so happy. Yeah, so thank you, Colin, for being brave and sharing some of your story with everyone. I really appreciate that, and I think everyone else does too. So I am going to start off the discussion. I have Hayley and Pascal to the two sides of the seating. So when I turn it over to the floor, just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you, and Jacob magically will be able to hear you all the way up in Get Sound territory, which is, yeah, amazing. So, Jacob, to Claire, yeah, well, thank you. We're joined by a couple hundred people who really enjoyed the film, I think, from that response. So, obviously we've seen the film, but I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself in any way that you feel works, anything you want to say, but also maybe something about the hopes. What are your hopes regarding the impact of this film? What might you want to see come out the other side of this?
Sure, thank you, Hannah. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, okay. So my name's Jacob. I'm Lochskeeg, Eagle Clan, Ntamtqen Haida Celtic, also English, Scottish ancestry. My grandparents actually lived in Oliver. My grandfather was a rancher there, and I spent quite a few summers, and I've watched a movie there once. So, really wonderful to see everybody. Just a couple opening comments of kind of some things that have come up in previous screenings. So, in no particular order, I want to mention that the film was thoroughly fact-checked in order for CBC to put their name on it and put it online. Every single thing that was said in the film had to be fact-checked and essentially ensured. So you can believe what you saw essentially in the film and what you heard. Another question I get asked a lot is for those who are looking to learn more about our history as First Nations people. There's all kinds of great resources out there, but one of the ones to start with might be the book 21 Things You Might Not Know About the Indian Act by Bob Joseph. I can't remember actually if in the film I referenced pass and permit policy that wasn't repealed until 2014, and pass and permit was one of the things that the professor was talking about early in the film, where Indigenous people were forbidden from purchasing any tools, implements, seeds for the purpose of food production, and were also forbidden from selling food, distributing food, or even giving food away. So that policy was in place until 2014, and I learned about that in the book, The 21 Things You Might Not Know. So that's a really good starting point. To your question, Hannah, about hope, I mean, when we started the film, again, it was not us at TeaCreek that created the film. It was Ben Cox and Ryan Dickey, the filmmakers. Is their idea, and everything you see in the film is real. It wasn't scripted. They were filming it as we went along. My initial hope was that back when we got going in 2020, that it was going to be, TeaCreek was going to become this great movement, and that it would just sort of take off. We'd prove ourselves, and we'd start, getting government contracts and things like that. While they were filming, we were really struggling with funding, as you see some of that in the film. And you can see they actually started filming in 2022, and you can see some of that struggle for us to raise funds and raise support. And then in 2023, we got this nice fiscal year-end slippage contract from the province, and we were able to engage and train more than 190 Indigenous people that year. It was very, very busy, and we had over 300 register and enroll at one time. So we couldn't get to everybody. We're not mentioned in the film, you know, there's more people than we can handle. So my hope is still, 5 years later, that we're going to get to the tipping point, that we will get to the point where we have support from the Crown, and my rationale for that is that the government directly destroyed Indigenous food and food systems over a very long period of time in this country. It definitely wasn't accidental. It was policy and law, and government needs to be at the front of repair, and the country really needs us, really needs Indigenous people to be participating in the economy, and specifically the food economy today. So I'm still hoping for that. We're not there as I come to you today. As you saw towards the end of the film, we unfortunately did not get funded by the government this year. We still don't have anybody calling us up and saying, hey, what can we do together? How can we make this work? So we're still hoping for that tipping point from the government side, the non-Indigenous side. We're long past tipping point on the First Nation side. We have so many nations that reach out to us who want to have their own TeaCreek. They want to get farming again or producing food again in different ways. So there's no shortage of momentum on that side of the equation. So lastly, I just want to acknowledge our funders, because we had a very challenging year this year. It was very, very difficult, but we did have a number from the private sector that came on board and helped get us there. So just some quick acknowledgements. Skilled Trades BC, their funding, our only training that we did this year was funded by them. The REDIP grant we got from the Jobs Economic Development, that was a last year grant, but it really helped. Infrastructure investments really helped us this year. First Peoples Culture Council, Indian Collective from the United States was one of our biggest funders this year. REFBC, Real Estate Foundation, Make Way, Vancouver Foundation, New Relationship Trust, Swift Foundation in the United States, as well. So Food Banks of BC, so you can see it was a largely other charities and charitable organizations that donated money to us and helped us keep the lights on. So thank you very much to all of our funders this year. It's really made a big difference, and really happy that we're still going and that you all get to see the film. Thanks for having me.
So it would be great if you could just each introduce yourselves. Dixon, we've heard from you a wee bit already, but that's okay. You can you can also so introduce yourselves. That'd be great. We'll start with Richard. I see you've got the mic anyways, so that's perfect. Erica and then Dixon, and then maybe think about what stood out the most to you from watching the film, any key reflections, or even anything from what Jacob has said. Richard.
Dixon's trying to steal the thunder here. So yes, I'm Richard Cannings. I'm the Member of Parliament here in the South Okanagan and West Kootenay. And I, first of all, just want to thank Jacob for building that TeaCreek world and showing it to the rest of the world, because that was such an inspirational 75 minutes. I was just riveted the whole time, seeing the impact that has. And it has this dual impact, not only for feeding people, feeding all of us, but also feeding us spiritually and in terms of our own mental health. I know my wife can attest to this. When I come back from Ottawa on a Friday afternoon, the first thing I do is walk around our little acre outside Ntamtqen and go to the vegetable garden and see how things are growing, see how the garlic's coming up, or going and planting some garlic. You know, to me, that is what really feeds my soul. And if only we could give that to everyone in the world, for that matter. But it's so important these days. But that film really spoke to that part of it.
Hi everyone, my name is Erica Nitchie and I work with the BC Ministry of Agriculture and Food as the team lead for our Indigenous Partnerships and Reconciliation team. So it's a little snippet within the ministry. And I am semi-local from further north in the valley, so actually in Sequatmagulu, so just outside of Enderby, so really honored to be hosted here in Silk's territory. I think, and I echo Richard in just honoring Jacob in how darn inspirational you are. Jacob, it's, I have the privilege of connecting with a lot of communities throughout the province, and it's, the work of TeaCreek has just like reached all corners of the land, and it's just really cool to see, because it's food and food security isn't new, but I think just like this groundswell, and I think we're all feeling it, and part of that is the pressure that climate change is putting us on us all, but there's this serious groundswell going on, which has an excitement to it. I think one of the pieces that really resounded for me in watching the film is just the reminder of how powerful growing food is. It's a real act of power, and also reflecting that it's, you know, that recognition of the power of food has been used in nefarious ways as well, like with how the country was colonized, and agriculture, European agriculture was kind of used as a tool in that process of colonization. So there's all these different aspects of that, I guess, that just add to the complexity of what Indigenous food sovereignty is and what it needs to be. So, yeah, it's a lot. Food is a big deal for all of us, and it's more than just food. It nourishes us, but as Richard mentioned, it's a soul nourishing thing as well.
The question was what was the biggest impact, or what's the key kind of reflections you had after watching the film, and maybe thinking back to when you first watched it, in your case?
Yeah, the biggest impact, you know, I didn't know about all this was going on, and all of a sudden, TeaCreek Jacob showed up. He actually come in my house, and he was there, and you know, it's all my life as a farmer and struggling and not having the marginalization that happens to Indigenous people, Indian people, Sequatmagulu people. To bring it out into the open, but really the most thing about it was those people that were working on that farm. I see them sitting up here, the crowd, I see this young lady here. It makes my heart swell up. Tears come out of my eyes because my heart pushes up against my tear ducts or something. But it's to see my people waking up, our people. You know, there's always going to be a resistance. They're all going to be dragging their heels, and you know, we talk about it. And you know what he's doing. He motivated like over 175 people. Trade runs through that part. If I can get 20 people to start off, because our competition in the southern part of the province is we have all kinds of opportunities, jobs and everything else, and I'm just really trying to figure out how we're going to get these guys to become farmers again and understand the true value of it. And when I see this, video, and I seen it in August or September. It clicked with me. What he's doing, what Jacob's doing, is that something that we've always been trying to do. You know, here you may not, how to get a job, a real job. I finally quit my real job to get another really big job to see how we can make things better for the people. We want to teach these guys, and I'm going to use this guy's model, Jacob's model, to, and not so much in the sense of taking, but do you utilize some of the strength of getting these young kids? You see those kids smile. That was the most motivating thing for me. That's seeing power. You see those old people that are laughing. That's what's missing in society. Is that what Jacob calls me the big brother or the old brother or
Big uncle.
or the uncle. Or in some cases the bad uncle. Those are the most satisfying things. Growing food, putting food on the table, but when you see people smiling and actually having relationships between them. I've known Richard for 30 years. I was a politician in the 90s. And he's sitting over because I asked him to come here. He came. Like Clarence said, acknowledge him for his services, right? I'm still doing services. We're going to do services till we die. And, Jacob, I really look forward to working with you and understanding how we can make a difference.
Thank you very much. I could ask questions myself, but I won't. I will turn it over to anyone else who would like to ask a question, either to the panel in general or to someone specific. Just let us know. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. One went straight up at the back, right at the top. Keep your hand raised just so the mic people can see. Is that Kevin? Am I looking at Kevin? Okay, we'll get you after.
Hi there. My name is Eric Thompson. Here with my mother-in-law, Mary Trainer. Thrilled to watch this film. It was quite amazing. And I'm thinking of how difficult it is to secure those government grants, as you mentioned in the film, from year to year. And you talked about the private sector. And I'm just wondering if you could share with us, Jacob, some of the maybe some of the trials that you're trying or looking at to get private sector people up there. And I was thinking of like a government, or not a government, but a retreat, where you bring in a bunch of executives to come and work alongside Indigenous people, and they pay a large amount of money to do that kind of thing. Have you looked at some interesting models for private money?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely, we've done that. So starting a couple of years ago, our main funder this year, Skilled Trades BC, brought their board up for a retreat, and it was stellar. They brought all their executives, they brought all their staff from around BC who work with people in the trades. And then we also had one of Canada's largest food companies, their CEO came, absolutely blown away. They made a donation, they came for a corporate retreat. So we do that, but the revenues aren't enough. Like, that's one of the challenges, of course, is that putting on retreats is a lot of work, and it takes us away from the core work that we're trying to do that you saw in the film. And so that's what we're having to do. We're being driven to do right now due to lack of funding. Is we're having to reduce and reduce and reduce. So we're having to reduce the amount of things we do because anything we do, it's in business they call it opportunity cost, right? Like if I'm going and changing my tire, then I'm not available to go and serve pizza at the pizza shop. So I try and make sure my tire doesn't break so I can keep serving pizza and keep making money or whatever. So that's the challenge we have at TeaCreek, is it's actually 15 different initiatives. We've got them mapped out. The farm is one of them, and farming is a ton of work. We're also a post-secondary institution, and anybody who's been involved in post-secondary knows how much work that is. So we're a fully functioning farm, and we're post-secondary. Plus we're a restaurant. We're one of the busiest restaurants in the Northwest with how many meals we serve to to all of our clients and guests who come through. Plus, we're a red seal run mechanic repair shop that has a number of staff who have to repair all the machinery and keep it running, as you see in there, and that's training and it's jobs and it's opportunity. So yeah, it's a very complicated operation, and but here's the real trick, is if we accessed the same fair contracts from government that non-Indigenous institutions get to provide the same services we provide. So if we got the same amount of money per student, per Indigenous student to deliver the training you saw on the screen, we'd be fine. We could afford to pay for all of it. But the most money we've ever received in a contract has been 50% of what non-Indigenous institutions get to provide the same service to Indigenous people. And our average, I've added it up, our average across all our contracts and contributions is 30%. And I've got a lot of examples of that where, you know, and Erica could share some of them with you as well, where I've gotten quite upset once I find out that, hey, we got this contract for this amount, and all the non-Indigenous groups in the province got 3, 4, 5, 6 times as much money to do exactly the same thing, only because they're non-Indigenous. So that is one of the biggest challenges we face, is essentially systemic, institutionalized racism, where agencies and groups look at us and go, well, you're First Nations or you're Indigenous, so you need to go over to this other much smaller amount of money, whereas if you're non-Indigenous, you can access more money to provide the same services that we do. So I just want to be clear on that. Like, we are creative. We do have lots of different ideas, and we do all kinds of things to bring in grants, contributions, provide services, to bring money in. But it shouldn't be this hard. Like, if we were treated fairly, we'd be fine. So what I say is reconciliation and reconciliatory acts within this country, we need to start with fairness first, like as Indigenous-led groups, you know, like Dixon's work and my work. We should be able to access the same money and funding that a non-Indigenous person would get for doing the same thing. And then we should get more because of all that theft and trauma and extra barriers and problems we have to deal with. And that should be the reconciliatory act, is getting us the extra on top, not trying to get us to fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the panel want to comment on private finance and possibly other elements of what Jacob was saying, what I kind of heard but wasn't said, but says was around systemic racism and how that impacts funding? Or I can turn it back.
I just concur with them.
Good.
Yes, I would concur as well, and I would just say, and I think most people here know this, certainly Dixon and Jacob know this unfairness, this disconnect in funding between Indigenous education, you know, just supports in general, is something that happens at all levels of the federal government. Certainly I hear it every day in Ottawa. We have people like Cindy Blackstock taking the government to court for years and years and years to right some of these wrongs, winning every time, and the government keeps taking them to court when they lose, and it's very dispiriting. You know, when we think of all the things that we need to do in terms of reconciliation, and yet we can't even get clean drinking water on reserves. It's certainly been one of the biggest disappointments in my 9 years in Ottawa, is getting there in 2015 and hearing all the right things being said. And as Jacob said, it's all talk and no action, or very little action. So that, I didn't want to put a downer on the night, but that's certainly something we here in Ottawa every time people, my colleagues in my caucus, the NDP caucus, bring this up every day. I know Taylor Bacharach, who's your MP, Jacob, he basically sits next to me in the house, and so we talk about this quite a bit, but it's been very frustrating getting that true action.
The one thing I would or I guess two things I would add. One, concur also. Unfortunately, it's a long, slow journey to see more parity and support for Indigenous food systems and agriculture work compared to the rest of the province. And we see small wins, but there's just so much built in bias, and even pieces like minimum income thresholds, for example, of $30,000 to $50,000 for a lot of the Ministry of Agriculture and Foods programs, and we have very strong statistics to show that the median income, net farm revenue, and net household income don't come close to reaching those thresholds. So definitely, we've seen some small wins, especially over the recent years since the Declaration Act came in BC in 2019. However, it's not fast enough, and I guess I really hear your urgency, Jacob, and see the urgency as we see food security in First Nations across the province be like up to 4 times as high as across the population on average.
Thank you. We could follow that rabbit hole, but I will turn it over to Kevin, who I believe has a microphone.
I do. Can you hear me? Good.
Oh, sorry, is there someone? What's going on? Oh, up at the back.
Hello, I'm Roger Hall, local farmer. I didn't hear, Jacob, how big of acres you have under production and how many people are working on your farm as employees.
Sure, that's a great question. So our farm is 140 acres. We only have 3.5 acres of field block in production. We do about 10,000 pounds of vegetables per acre each year. And then in terms of employees for the farm, it's a little bit tough to pin down these days because we have a lot of folks now who are cross-trained and kind of jump into help very, very part-time from other parts of the operation. But this year there was about 2 dedicated Indigenous farm workers for the operation for the season. And then, like I said, the rest of us would just kind of, like my wife and I jumped on the water wheel transplanter, for a day to get all the crops in, before the deadline and things like that. But we don't do a lot of the farming ourselves anymore. So hopefully that answers your question. Another question I do get from a lot of other farmers too is like, why don't we do animals? Like, why aren't we doing ranching? And the simple answer to that is just cost. Anybody who ranches or does animals knows how much infrastructure you need and how much money it costs to get something like that going from scratch. So what we do is we actually go to our partner ranches in the same valley here, and we go and learn on their ranch rather than building one at our place.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. And Kevin?
Hi, Kevin Ronigan from the Community Foundation in South Okanagan, South Queen. I just want to say thank you for inviting us to help support this. It was a wonderful opportunity for us to bring this film to our communities. My question is, as a citizen and somebody who's striving to be an ally to Indigenous peoples, how can we put pressure in the right places to accelerate things so that they meet up with the urgency that we're hearing from Dixon and from Jacob? What can we do as citizens?
Does anyone feel they want to respond to that? Yep, Dixon? Or Jacob? You can feel Jacob's ready apparently. Dixon can feel you, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're trying a few different things. So one is on our website, TeaCreek.ca, there is a donate, support us button up in the upper right-hand corner if anybody feels moved to make a financial contribution. But the biggest thing you can do actually is spread the word. Like, now that you've seen the film, please encourage other people to watch it. It's free. It's on CBC Gem. Write letters is a big one. Like, email, put an actual letter in the mail to your to your local MP, MLA, but also to specific ministries, and just starting to put some pressure on government to say, hey, this is something that it's not just some noisy Indigenous people over there that are clamoring and have been for years, but actually it's something that the rest of the country wants and needs, and I feel that very strongly. Like, we would not exist without the support of private individuals from across the country this year, and I just really want to again say thank you. And I feel essentially that there's a critical amount of Canadians who are wanting to make positive change and be and act in reconciliatory ways, especially once we learn the history, right? The truth of our history of this country. It's a real movement, and I have a lot more faith in sort of your average person, Canadian, than I do in government right now. So I just want to express that and say thank you, and you can absolutely, get on the if you're a keyboard warrior, start making some noise and spread the word. Thank you.
Oh, I'm getting directed at what can you do for Ntamtqen Garden? But we have our MLA from the Boundary Smell Community down. Is she present still here? Oh, she's way over there. Have a good look at her. Could you stand up and address the people? Danila Wilson. I think I didn't say that right, but she's the Boundary Smell Committee MLA that's now taken over for Roy Russell. So those are the points of pressure. Just to make that clear.
Thanks, Danila.
As far as helping the community, I got to really put it off to the volunteers. We have a row of them up on top here. We have a bunch over here. Those are the kind of things these people stepped up. I think we had a little over 70 people come to the Ntamtqen Garden this year. Over 70 people. I would give them a little cheer. Our caterers were up on the top row over there. They stepped up, they came through, they fed you. And if there's food out on the table, you can take it with you. But what you can do we were asked at the front door, we had some young fellows there people there that maybe you should give an email address. Maybe you want to write a check for $1,000 or $10,000 or $20,000. I'm not ashamed to ask you for money. I'm not begging. I'm just asking you to give generously from your heart, because those real things, it's like we're doing it. We're nickel and dime. We appreciate the sponsors that got us to here so that we could help people out, travel, gift cards, money, that we fed you. That was all just given by $100,000 here. People were generous. They give us. That's how they helped. And what Jacob said about going back to your tables. All these things are taught from the kitchen table. You learn, you come into this world as a naked little human being. Your grandmother, your grandfather, your mother, your dad are the ones that are teaching you how to be this human being. I know most of you are here because you care, you're sincere, you want to learn. But there's empty seats here that are all the way around here, that represents people that might not be paying full attention. They might not be supportive. They might not even like us, Indigenous Indian people. And those are the ones that you have to say, well, hey, maybe, I see this film, opportunity. I tried to be a farmer all my life. I worked the farms in the 70s and 80s with nothing. The last year, having United Way, having the Local Food Infrastructure Fund, NCBC, BC First Native Agriculture, tossing a little bit of money here and there into the pot, it became a very substantial pot. And I was able to do things that I'd never been able to do in the 70s, 80s, and 90s as a farmer. I'm getting up there, so we're really asking for support. That's why this gentleman over here is here. Richard Kennedy, member of Parliament. He just didn't show up because of this question. Because he needs to go back and say, well, this is what I learned. Erica needs to go back to her minister and pass that message on. Kevin needs to go back over. I met the board of director, the chairman of your foundation. And those are the kind of ways where we're going to be able to twist your rubber arm and say, well, you know, how can you support the Indigenous public? You know, if you come to the Smelt community, I'm so proud of what we did, just like Jacob is. He totally blows me away on his admiration and his commitment to what he did. And he's not even telling you all the story. The other part of the story made me cry because of the cultural connections to the land. The significance parts about Jacob's piece of property, what he purchased. He purchased land back. I got this T-shirt, I don't have it underneath it, but I wish I had. I'd taken my shirt off and I'd put it on there. Because it says, I'm going to need that land back. So I just want to say that, you know, that's why Richard Canning sitting here, the ACC's up there. I really appreciate you representing the tape, the other color, right? The blue color. And now, so let's hope we have a good relationship, because I'm talking to you directly as the leadership now, that you step up. I invite you to community to see what Indigenous people are doing, what we're doing. I'd love to explain. I don't like going over and over the things that hinder us and keep us from growing the opportunities, but we have some land there that can produce and provide food for all people in the Okanagan and probably the Lower Mainland if we were able to get it up and going. And Jacob's program, what he's doing, I can see a lot of potential of developing these young people that did come here tonight. So that's the way I see it. If you want to help, pick up a little card. It's got an email address on it, and write a check. Send it to Jacob.
We probably just have time. We can push it for a couple more questions. So I'll turn it back to the floor again. Okay.
Why is Squeeze Shannon Peltier? My question is for Colvin. I'm a youth worker. I do youth work outreach and programming for the Sois Indian Band. So I have like a two-part question. So what was the main inspiration and driving force for you to get involved in food sovereignty for your nation? And second part is, what advice would you give to people who work for the band, specifically with youth, like ages 13 to 30, to get them to buy into it? Or to get them to not just come periodically, like, oh, we're gonna do pasta, so I'm gonna come for pasta night, but to want to eat different foods that they might not be used to and to be more interested in it. Thank you.
Awesome questions. How I got involved into this work was mainly seeking a different life than the life that I was living. I decided to move back home just for my own well-being, and I just decided to stumble across a community garden and my uncle here that has given me the honor to work with him. My true connection to the land has really been established thanks to this job, and it was purely accident how I got into this work, and I found a lot of peace in it. I found myself getting back to who I really am, and it was the most honoring thing that I've felt in a very long time, and I actually feel fulfilled with this job. As far as getting the youth involved, it all starts with a visit, honestly. It just takes one trip to the garden just to see what we do, and it's the true experience of being on the land and on the soil and interacting with it, getting to learn it, because I didn't come from that background. I grew up as an urban Indian, so I am very grateful to be able to work on the land, and that's truly how you spark that inspiration into a young mind like that, is to just get them out there once, and you'll find some kind of joy, some aspect of that garden life that makes you feel something inside that you probably haven't felt before. It's truly about the reconnection, and that's how I would see myself getting the youth, especially our community youth, involved, is to just, it takes one trip, and then you see how they interact with the land, and then you develop some kind of plan for the next time, how you're gonna convince them to come out, and just truly making them feel like they belong, because that's how it went down for me, essentially. Thank you.
So that was an invitation to Indigenous youth and community to show up at the garden, come and hang out, see what we're up to, hang out with Coven, like we're there. Yeah, we're going to be there all winter, and we're going to be thinking about spring and starting to do stuff. So yeah, please come visit. Do we have another question? Oh, Roger.
What? I couldn't shut up, Bill. This question is for all you sitting up there, but our participants here and here in the stadium as well. And it's made mention in your presentation, which I really appreciate. Thank you for doing that. And it touched on one of the critical issues now forthcoming is the water issue and climate change. And it's a bigger issue than just the red man. It's going to be an issue where it's the red, white, yellow, and the black people all together as one. And it's how are we going to unite all the peoples on this land that we touch? How are we going to unite one another rather than just the budgets which you need to grow your vegetables now? But it's going to be a bigger picture on how we portray ourselves and reflect the goodness for our children that are upcoming, the debt that we need to pay and that we collected on the fossil fuels. These forests that burning. The question remains while you try to sleep at night, how we bring forth that and unite the people to a real effective. You see, it's going to take all of us to grow these vegetables together. It's taken more than how much water we have and the water management here in the Okanagan. Something that we just experienced real lightly, and it's a really apparent sign of the times. This year we had 95% crop failure in the grape industry, the cherry industry, the peach industry. All the soft fruits froze out in a matter of 3 days. So my hope and my prayer is for the success of these small gardens, because that'll be some kind of sign for a good future that we can bring. If these small gardens can work, then maybe we can feed the people. So my question is to us, what's the plan going to be? What's our plan? And I would just like to not have an answer, but just to think and dwell upon that while we shake hands and hug one another and think about that. And resonate that question amongst our people, amongst our leadership. Those ones that are sitting here, whether you're a conservative, you're NDP, or a liberal, or you're Indigenous. That needs to be answered first and foremost now. That is a message that we can bring from this particular film here that brings tears also to my eyes. Thank you, sir, for doing that, for this walk, and bringing these forth, these people that are, wow, inspirational. Thank you very much, Limland. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm Roger too.
Thank you, Leonard, Roger. I'm going to take that opportunity member to give any closing statements, maybe reflecting a little bit on what Roger has said about the troubles we face with climate change and how these community gardens, community farms, and the work we want to do, how that addresses those issues. And I'd ask you to be fairly, I don't like asking people to be succinct, but we're just a little bit tight on time. So, but I would like to give you all the opportunity to round off the discussion. So I'll hand over to Jacob first, please.
Sure. Well, thank you again. Thank you, Roger, for the comments and the question, and absolutely everything you're saying is spot on. You know, with water, we ran out of water twice this year, which is kind of unheard of. We were in a level 5 drought, highest level under the provincial system, and then we got flooded, with water. But to me, the answer to leave you with is Indigenous led. That's the answer. We can all work together, but it's time for Indigenous people to take the lead. And I'll tell you why. The reason why is that 83% of the world's remaining biodiversity is being stewarded by Indigenous peoples globally. We're doing that on less than 1% of the world's financial resources. And a lot of the solutions that we need for things like food and production and fruit and handling extreme weather already exists within Indigenous knowledge. It's already there. If you look at the latest buzzwords like biochar, that's an ancient Indigenous technology that First Nations were using for thousands and thousands of years on this side of the world, and it was outlawed and made illegal by the colonial government here. You look at regenerative agriculture, that's Indigenous agriculture, folks. You don't have to explain it to us. We already know it. It's in our blood, quite literally. So that, to me, is the answer. Is we can all work together, but it's really important that Indigenous people be able to take the lead, especially within our own communities and within our own land, and that we're able to do things in a safe, respectful way. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for giving me the space and time. I want to point out that Peter from TeaCreek is there somewhere, and he's our program developer, fundraiser. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Peter's here. If you want to catch him, go for it. Try to. We're limited on time, but he's around. Richard.
Well, I would like to say, Linlin, to Jacob, for all that you've done to inspire us, to Dixon and everybody else who brought us here together tonight and who are working on this. And as far as, the crises we are in this world, whether it's the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, the mental health crisis, all these things, one of the things that I think ties them together, at least in my mind, is our disconnect with the earth, our disconnect with nature, our disconnect with where we get our food, how we get our food. We are building condos in Toronto now that don't even have kitchens. People don't know how to cook food, let alone know where it came from. And one of the most fulfilling things I've done in my time as an MP didn't really have much to do with my job as an MP, but I was a bus driver on the Salvation Army program to help disadvantaged kids in Penticton go out, and we would take them out to farms, and we would pick peaches, we would pick strawberries, we would pick whatever was ripe, and then we would come back to the Salvation Army kitchen and we would can them, and we'd make jam. And these kids, and I think probably their parents, had never even dreamt of doing this. And I think that's programs like TeaCreek is sort of a mega version of that, and we need to, as Jacob says, get to the tipping point and really spread this across the country. Lynn.
I don't have a whole lot to add following Jacob and Richard there. I guess what I would just say though is I think that like sort of the call to action and call to reflection from Roger is really, you know, for us all to show up as good humans. That's just a starting point. But recognizing that we are all completely dependent on food and water, and those pieces are looking more vulnerable than they have in people's recent memories. So I think events like this and relationships that build from events like this are always a good place to start too. And just wanted to express thanks again to Jacob, to Hannah and Dixon, Coven, Richard, everyone here that's come together to make this event happen tonight.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot to help, or, well, I guess I do have a lot to do, but what Roger talked about is the crisis, right? I'm on the land, I'm a hunter-gatherer, I traverse the land, I look at the land, I watch the river and the smoke coming in. It worries me, and, you know, what do we do about it? Well, I guess we need to set up some kind of a system, like, how do we talk about it? You know, how do we share this information? You know, the young people, they're all busy doing their own thing right now, and it's like, they're our answer, but we need to slowly start dragging them in, one by one, just kind of get them educated a bit, and develop this plan that Roger talks about. It's like, it's overwhelming, and just, it's much easier just to drill a well and put a pipe in and turn the water on. That's much easier than trying to develop this plan how we're going to utilize and save ourselves. There's so many contradiction ideas, but I think if we take one little bite at a time, you know, there's the water declaration in the Okanagan. They just signed this huge declaration in the Okanagan with all the municipalities, mayors, and all the chiefs and councils of the Silk Territory on the Okanagan region. Those kind of things are starts. But as an individual, I need to know more about what's going on. You need to learn more about what's going on. So it's about education, going back and forth. And what Jacob's doing is educating people just how to fundamentally have them get out of bed, enjoy life, feed people. What he's doing is just basic on the ground stuff. And if we can spread that kind of information amongst ourselves, you know, the intelligence probably all have jobs, you all probably doing important things, but the less fortunate, you know, people that are on the dark side, how do we help them? And that's always going to be my forte. I'm going to try to help one person that's really struggling become a better person, to pass that knowledge on to them. So if we all do that one at a time, we eventually get some. We've been working with COVID for 7 months, I think now. And Joseph, he left. He's my project, and that's going on 2.5 years. And it's always been a struggle. But it's called perseverance, where you actually love somebody enough to make a difference in their lives. And I'm going to just always lay that heavy-duty, big, strong heart, big love heart that I have in my heart, that I care about people. I care about each and every one of you. I'm a little bit of a racist, a little bit of a redneck, a little bit, you know, but most of all, a really caring, loving person. And I see good in all of you, even though, you know, I have to talk about that stuff. Because that's the way, that's who I am. I can't help not talk about who I am. And if once we talk about, each and every one of us talk about who we are, and we take the good out of that, and we mix it with the human, we break you laugh, we make you change your point of view, and take away that little bit of anger that's sparking in your head, and turn it into something that's good, like that young fella, Justin says, he planted a seed, we got to watch it grow. She's right there. That's our Justin. Right there, she's the one that's helping us. You know, when you see something as a human being grow, and that's answering Roger's question about it. We're all human beings But all we need to do is be fed this information to make us a different kind of a human being, where we're caring. I see, my heart is always going to say that I cannot help how I feel about people. I know that there's good in all of us. Every one of us have goodness. Every one of us can learn, every one of us can grow, everyone can be challenged. But when you get rid of that negative aspect and start thinking about a collective seed, like how are we going to grow this? How is this going to happen? How are we going to make sure we have enough drinking water? Think about that one. That's all I wanted is how are we going to do that, right? If you knew what was going on in the Okanagan underwater system, holy smokes, what is going on? I bet half people don't know that the water's allocations are 155% overdrawn right now. That the reservoirs are all just little shallow things. We only have this much snow on Apex Mountain. This should be 4 feet of snow. So just a little scary thoughts too. So think about it. Think about my friends in Japan where they wash their dishes in 6 cups of water, where they all share baths together. Think about that too, what can happen to us. So I'm going way off of the deep end of the pool. I'm getting this evening.
Haven's going to finish us off.
I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for coming out. We truly appreciate it. This is our first organized event, so it's nice to see the turnout.
Oh, there's draw prizes. We got draw prizes. We got some door prizes.